Hello, my name is Ashley Rooney. I'm with the Lexington Remembers World War II Committee. And we have been interviewing survivors of World War II. And today I have with me a wonderful gardener, a friend and member of the Garden Club, Crystal McCarthy, who came to us from Germany many years ago. She's here to tell her story. So, Crystal, when were you born in Germany?
I was born July 4th, 1941, in a town called Solingen that is famous for cutlery. And we had a big old house in the center of the village where people would run to when the bombing raids came. Mm-hmm. And I remember this so well that everybody listened to the radio and they would say a heavy bombing squadron coming in over Holland. See, we were not too far from Holland. Coming in over Holland and heading for the Ruhr area. And that's when you grabbed your belongings. Everybody had his little backpack, and I had a little backpack with my doll in it. And then off to this old house to the basement, and you would sit and wait. My parents were that night in our house, where in the city.
Yeah.
And the house was bombed out. And we hadn't heard from my parents the next day. So my grandfather walked along the railroad tracks because our house where we lived was not far from the railroad tracks, and he used that as a direction. The house was gone, and there was so much rubble. Oh, yeah. So my grandfather, he knew everybody was usually in the basement, so he was able to open a cellar window, cleared of the rubble, and get my parents and the other people from the building out of there and saved them.
They were still there.
Yeah, so my grandfather saved them out of there. I think I have to mention that 80% of my town was bombed.
Oh.
So was flattened. It was all rubble, And then the hunger came because the whole government system had broken down.
I was drafted into the Army right out of high school, just before the advent of D-Day. And I started back through the woods to catch up to the front line. And I heard on the way back, I heard someone say here, and of course, German here, H-I-E-R is just sounds the same as H-E-R-E here. And I thought it was one of our soldiers that had been hit by a sniper and was wounded. And I went back and found this person lying in the woods, and it was a German soldier, not an American, and a young guy, and he had been shot in the abdomen. I don't know whether it was a 50 caliber bullet or one of ours rifles, but anyway, his stomach was ripped open and his intestines were visible. And he said, shoot me in German, and I had enough high school German at the time, so I know exactly what he said. And I looked closely, and he was, I figure, about my age. And we were both there, as I said, two blue-eyed boys in dark woods of chaos. And he was begging me to shoot him. Yes. But I looked into his face, into his eyes, and he had become not an enemy soldier, but a sort of he was another human being, right. As a kid, right. My age. And I simply couldn't do it. Couldn't shoot him. There was a difference between killing as a soldier in a battle situation and something that was so intimate that it was almost like a murder. And so I knew that the first unwritten law of armored warfare is you never leave a wounded soldier behind you because you're apt to be shot in the back and wounded. So you should always dispatch that person.
Oh.
And I knew that was the case. I knew that I would be the last person to see this guy in the woods because I had come through the woods by myself and there was nobody else behind me. But I simply couldn't bring myself to do it. So I kicked his rifle out of his way. He couldn't reach his rifle, and left him there because I had to get the ammunition to my friends on up ahead. And I know now, as an older person, much more experienced, I think, in the nature of life and death and the like, I could do it. I could have ended his life. That would have been an act of mercy.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But as a 19-year-old, just 19-year-old kid, I just couldn't. And the moral dilemma of and regret for not doing that has remained with me for all, forever. And I don't think that there is a reasonable answer to something like that. There can only be an existential answer to something like that.
Right.
So that was an intimate kind of experience that changed my understanding, I think, of the broader nature of warfare.
And so I was up at 5,000 feet, but I was flying to the left and right and up and down 1,000 feet at a time,
Yeah.
And keeping my eyes open for the skies and anything down low that might jump him. So that way he could concentrate on the reconnaissance. And that's when I got in trouble.
Well, tell us about when you got into trouble.
Yeah. Well, I was looking all around and checking the skies and all this stuff. And one time I looked around and I looked forward again. And when I did, I saw all these black puffs. It was a big cube of the black anti-aircraft puffs above me, below me, in front of me, behind me, all around me. And then I felt the plane get lifted up about 5 or 10 feet. And I said, whoa, that was a close one. And it was. That was one that hit me. The engine was getting rougher, and pretty soon smoke was coming out. And coming outside and also coming in through the inside to the cockpit, so I couldn't see the instrument panel.
Oh boy.
And I had less power, so I was gradually starting to lose altitude. And I had cranked the canopy open to get the smoke out of the cockpit so maybe I could see the instrument panel.
Mhm.
And the smoke got heavy enough where that didn't help, so I figured I was going to have to bail out. Also, the plane was losing altitude. But I had a little hitch. I had opened the canopy to with the crank to let the smoke out.
Right.
And when I was going out, I didn't release the canopy. I just was going out because the crank had opened it. And I started out and I had forgotten to disconnect my throat mic and my headset. So I slid back in and disconnected those. On the way back out, my knee hit the crank, which rolled the canopy back. And the canopy slid closed with me half in and half out. And I had forgotten that I needed to release the canopy because the canopy was already open.
Uh-huh.
And so I did a lot of kicking and pushing and pulling and
And
tugging.
the plane is losing altitude. Oh,
Plane was going downhill all this time.
oh boy.
And so I finally got enough of me out, and the plane must have been going about 350 or something miles per hour, and it slipstream. I got enough of me out so the slipstream just yanked me right out of there.
Ugh.
And when it did, then I checked to see if the plane wasn't around me and pulled the ripcord for the parachute. When I finally pulled the parachute, opened it, I was only about 2 or 3 tree heights up in the air, so I didn't have much longer going down. And then I looked down. I saw I was heading right to land, right in the middle of my fiery plane. The plane was on fire.
Oh.
And we didn't have steerable parachutes then, so and you can pull the ripcord, the shroud lines a little bit, and you can slide a little bit dangerous because if you pull a little too much, you'll slip the air out from under the parachute and you just drop down. So they didn't recommend you do that, but I wasn't too happy with landing in the fire either. Then I noticed that I was automatically drifting a little bit off the fire. So I landed in the field, and in the same field the plane was in, and I was gathering up the chute to head for the hedgerows, and so I could dive over them and get in cover. And I heard gunfire, and I thought, oh boy, they're shooting at me. And so I started running across the field, and the shroud lines would catch on bushes, and I would tumble and everything, but I just kept going, and I got to the hedgerow, and I dove over the hedgerow.
Wow.
By the time I was diving over the hedgerow, I realized they weren't firing me. That was my own ammunition getting cooked off with
No.
fire. Yeah. So that was good. So I started burying the parachute in the leaves at the base of this hedgerow. And I was just about done, and I looked up, and about 80 feet away or something, I saw this German leveling a rifle toward me.
Oh.
So I had to make a quick decision. Do I run or do I give up? And I figured I could still run pretty fast then. But then I thought, well, I don't know. And it's a good thing I didn't run, because on the other side of the hedgerow, another German had come down in a camouflage cape, and he was about 15 feet away from me. So if I had decided to run, he could have shot me he wouldn't have missed.
Yeah, would have missed. Oh boy.
And
How
so,
old were you in all this? You were about 22 at this time?
well, I was 20.
20. Oh.
Yeah, it was 1944. I was
Okay.
born in 24.
20.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, a little more excitement than I had planned for.